Olemme vanhassa hollantilaisessa Haarlemin kaupungissa ja täällä on tosi paljon nähtävää. Tämä on keskiaikainen kaupunki, mutta tänään me tutustumme aivan erityiseen paikkaan, täällä olevaan Corrien Boomin ja hänen perheensä museoon. Corrien Boom ja hänen koko perheensä pelasti noin 800 juutalaista toisen maailmansodan aikana. Mennään tutustumaan tähän paikkaan ja katsotaan, mitä siellä on meille annettavaa tämän päivän ihmisille.
Hello, you're very welcome. You're very welcome to be here in het huis van de familie ten Boom, in the house of the familie ten Boom in Haarlem. My name is Maaike and I will tell you the whole story of this beautiful family who has helped over more than 800 people during the Second World War. This house has been made out of two houses. Since the 15th century we have information about it. Somebody bought this part of the house and the whole other house next to it and put it a ship's mast in the middle and built the stairs around it. This house was an excellent hiding place during the Second World War. 800 people have been helped, people have been hidden. In this house is a hiding place and people have been hidden here when a raid took place. Members of this family were taken out of this house for helping so many people during the raid and they have given their lives for helping a lot of Jewish people. Willem ten Boom, the grandfather of Corrie, became a watchmaker, repairsman and salesman. At the year 1844, Willem ten Boom read in his Bible in Psalm 122 verse 6 to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. This family always went to the church at the big square in Haarlem, the Grote Bavo. He went to the members of his church and he asked, why don't we do that? It's written in the Bible. They couldn't answer him and he decided in 1844 to start a prayer group in this house to pray for the peace of Jerusalem with an interdenominational group of people. In the hearts of this family and the people who started to pray, a love for the Jewish people started to grow. And it never ended. The prayer group went on and on. Till 1944, this family has helped so many Jewish people during the Second World War, they were taken out of the house for that. Then the prayer group stopped. When the museum opened, the prayer group came back again. The grandfather of Corrie, Willem, he got a son. His name is Casper, and Casper is the father of Corrie. Casper ten Boom became, like his father, also a watchmaker and repairsman. He opened a store in Amsterdam, in a Jewish area. He married Cornelia. They got 5 children in total. Betsy, the oldest. Willem. Another child was born but died at early age. And then Corrie was born. Corrie is the youngest. And she was born a month too early. She looked blue. The doctor said she doesn't have a chance to survive. Corrie became very healthy. She became the oldest of this whole family. She became 91 and she died at her birthday. A Jewish saying is that if you die at your birthday, you have had a very blessed life. But we in this museum tell all people that her life is a blessing still for so many people, as you will hear through this whole story of the familie ten Boom. Because the mother of Corrie had been a kindergarten teacher, she found it important to observe her children and to talk with her children. In that time in Holland, actually children should not be seen or heard. So these children of this family had a different, a healthy, a loving and caring upbringing. Corrie had a very blessed childhood. The most important thing in the life of Corrie happened in this room. At the age of 5, she was playing with her dolls and she was doing a little game, knocking on the door. Her mom observed her. She kneeled down to Corrie and she said, "Corrie, there's also knocking somebody on your door." And Corrie thought, "Oh, mommy wants to play with me." And then her mom said, "It's the Lord Jesus. He wants to come in your heart. Do you want to invite him in?" And Corrie remembers that she became so happy of that question, and together they prayed. And since that day, Corrie started to fiercely pray for people in need, like the people in this alley, the drunk men, also the poor families. And years later, when she became active in leading her girls' groups, all those girls were from families she had been praying for since she had been 5 years old. When the grandfather of Corrie, Willem ten Boom, died, his son Casper could take over downstairs the watchmaker shop, and later he could buy the whole house. The family started to live in it, and even 2 more aunts, sisters of the mother of Corrie, Cornelia, came to live in this house. So now they had a mom and 3 aunts, 4 moms that needed a lot of prayer sometimes to keep the peace. One of the aunts was called Tante Jans, and she lived in this whole room. Tante Anna, who came to live in this house, was a widower of the preacher. There's an original painting of him. Father ten Boom, he was a man of prayer. Downstairs in his shop, he loved it when people visited his shop and shared problems with him. He would offer always prayer. And if they didn't want to have a prayer from him, he would end with his famous quote, "The best is yet to come." So this whole area in Haarlem knew the familie ten Boom. It always had been a helping and warm-hearted family. Well, Father ten Boom, he found it important that his children learned Bible verses by heart, and he did something remarkable when they were young. He gave his children a Bible in a different language at the age of 10. Corrie had gotten the English Bible, Betsy the German one, Nolly the French one, and Willem the Hebrew one. Father ten Boom could not have known that 40 years later, Betsy and Corrie would be sent to a concentration camp in Germany, where they could use English and German language to encourage all women there. And later, after the war, Corrie went to travel all over the world, and she already had learned English since the age of 10. The son of Casper didn't become, like his father and grandfather, a watchmaker. He wanted to study theology. Father ten Boom was so grateful for that. And in the year 1925, Hitler was writing Mein Kampf in prison. Willem ten Boom was aware of the dangers of the upcoming fascism, and in the year 1926 he was sent to Germany to do research and write a dissertation about it. This is Willem. When he came back, he came to his family. He warned the whole family that they should be ready to help all Jewish people when they would come and flee from Germany, to help them. He had warned his family. In a way, they were prepared. Corrie grew up. She became the first female watchmaker of Holland. So when the Nazis had made lists of all the people who were Jewish and they were fired of their workplaces, they didn't have food and money anymore. They couldn't buy their own food anymore. And then the Nazis said to the Jewish people who were fired, "Come to us, we have work camps and they are humane." That was a lie. But the media was then in hands of the Nazis. So a lot of Jewish people went to the work camps and were killed there. When the rumors got started that it weren't work camps, then Jewish people went into hiding. Corrie also founded a scouting club called the Triangle Girls. Find your power in prayer. A lot of girls entered her clubs. She already knew now so many girls in Haarlem and also their parents. So when the war came, she could work together with a lot of these girls and the parents of these girls. So this house looks from the window, you can look at the alley here, the Schoutensteeg. This alley actually ends where the old police station has been seated. So the Nazis were actually walking around here. And also there the street ends where the big square is, where the Nazi mayor's office had been. So they took a big risk in helping a lot of people. Corrie had been working in the shop downstairs. Her sister, Betsy, stayed unmarried just like Corrie. And when the aunts had passed away and her sister Nolly and her brother Willem moved out, only Corrie, Betsy and father Willem, they lived in this house. They had so many rooms left and they prayed what to do with it. And then they took in a lot of missionary kids. The parents went abroad and the children had to go to school. Sometimes 7 teenagers in this house from different families, also that needed a lot of prayer. But they all loved the very kind and loving eyes of Father ten Boom. They had such a joyous time here together. They were very blessed. And all the beds for these children were already in the rooms. So when the war came, this family was so well known for always having helped people and having those missionary kids in the house that they did not have to remove all the beds. And that's why they were also able to help so many people during the Second World War. Well, and then the war came, the 10th of May 1940. Hitler wanted to form a Third Reich and he wanted it to be included out of an Aryan race. And for example, he didn't want Jewish people or people from a gypsy background in it. He wanted Holland to join. Holland wanted to stay neutral. And then Hitler attacked Rotterdam, a city full of civilians. And at the beginning, there was also some bombing going on above the house of the familie ten Boom because we live very close by Amsterdam airport, Schiphol. And Corrie woke up one night and she had some tea with Betsy, and when it became quiet she went back to her bed. There, a 20-centimeter long piece of shrapnel was lying in her bed. She opened her hand when she went into her bed. She was so shocked because it could have killed her when she had stayed in the bed. Her heart was pounding and she ran to Betsy. And Betsy, she was so peaceful. She said, "Corrie, the Lord always knows the best and safest place where you have to be. You can trust in Him." At the beginning, the Nazis made lists of all the people who were Jewish. They had to wear identity papers with a big G in it. When the lists were complete, then the Nazis fired all the Jewish people from their public workplaces. But not from the Dreefschool in Haarlem, where the father of Corrie was in a boarding position. He said, "No, we are not going to fire our Jewish teachers." Our food was already put on ration, and everybody had their own personal ration cards. Corrie wanted to help people who went into hiding, and in Haarlem, the food coupons had been printed by the firma Enschede, which also printed for years before and after the war our bank money and our stamps. She knew one of the dads from the girls' club she had led, who was working there at that firm, Enschede. But she said to herself, "I am not clever enough to know if somebody chose for the good side or for the bad side." In Holland, 5% worked for the resistance, 5% for the Nazis, 90% stayed neutral or did nothing. we also ask ourselves that question. What would you do? Corrie didn't know if people would choose for which side they would choose, but she trusted in the Lord, and always before she went, she would pray and asked for his guidance. So she went to that father and she wanted to ask for 10 voetcoupons, and at the moment she stood before him, she asked for 100. She was shocked that she had to dare to ask for 100 voetcoupons. But he said, yes, I will help you, but I need to stage a real robbery. And the next day he came with 100 voetcoupons and 2 blue eyes he had himself hit. Corrie became very active in the resistance. They took actually a lot of risks because they always said yes when people needed help. And if I'm telling this story to you, I can sometimes think about myself, will I be so kind and loving and strong like this family has been? And I'm so grateful that Corrie in one of her books describes this. When she was younger, missionaries visited her parents. They had heroic stories of what they had done together with the Lord in Africa. And then she thought, oh, I can't do this. And she felt bad about herself. And she told it to her father, and her father said, well, Corrie, we often travel to Amsterdam by train. When do I give you your train ticket? And Corrie thought, at the moment, I need to show my train ticket to the conductor. You give it to me, Daddy. And her father said, yes, at the moment you will need strength and love and courage. The Lord will give it to you. And that is what happened throughout this whole story of the Familie ten Boom. Well, the first person that went into hiding in his house was actually not Jewish. They helped a Dutch student. A lot of Dutch students went into hiding when they had to sign agreements to collaborate with the Nazis or to have to go to Germany to work for them in the war industry. And this man, he became very active in the resistance, so he helped Corrie. And then the Nazis did a raid in a shop across the street. It's called Van Vuren. You can see it when you are outside on the street. And one day they did a raid. They wanted just to have the fur coats from the Jewish fur coat salesman. And Corrie saw that he was screaming at the Nazis, and she thought that's dangerous to resist to the Nazis. And she took the man in the shop. She gave him some coffee and said, shall we find you a safe place on the countryside? And he said, yes, please. He was the first person that was helped by them. And the next day, in the shop downstairs, people came for help. Because this family always had been known to be trustworthy and helpful. But since they helped the first Jewish person, Jewish people knew they could go to the people here for help. And they became very active in helping Jewish people. They also had some Jewish people permanent in hiding. For example, Mossel Meyer. He was a chazan, a singer of the Jewish synagogue. He loved to sing. You see here the piano. It's put originally at the place where it was standing during the Second World War. And sometimes he couldn't help himself. He would sit behind the piano and sing very loud Jewish songs. The neighbors complained and said, Corrie, we hear Jewish songs coming out of your house. That's so dangerous. And she said, well, sometimes people in hiding are just like little children. They won't listen to me.
Meier Mossel oli yksi kätköpaikasta turvan saanut juutalainen. Ohjelmaa kuvatessamme saimme yllättävän puhelun Israelista. Linjan toisessa päässä Meierin nyt jo 95-vuotias lähisukulainen kertoi meille, kuinka kiitollinen hän oli ten Boomin perheelle setänsä pelastamisesta. Meier Mossel toimi sodan aikana synagogan kanttorina. Näin Corrie ten Boom kirjoitti hänestä kirjassaan Kätköpaikka. Kyseessä oli juutalainen, jonka koko olemus, kasvonsa, hänen vaatteensa, vieläpä ryhtikin olivat kuin jonkin huvinäytelmän juutalaisen. Hymyilevä, hoikka noin 30-vuotias mies, jolla oli ulkonevat korvat ja sangattomat silmälasit, kumarsi keikarimaisesti. Pidin miehestä ensisilmäyksellä. Näin Amsterdamin synagogan kanttori tuli Kätköpaikkaan vuonna 1943. Hän ilahdutti kaikkia huumorillaan ja hyväntuulisuudellaan, huolimatta vaikeista oloista. Maier oli 5-henkisen veljessarjan nuorin. Hänen lisäkseen vain yksi veljistä, Zadok, selvisi hengissä Bergen-Belsenin keskitysleiristä. Samalla leirillä oli myös 3. veli, jonka lapset selvisivät sodan loppuun asti. Yksi näistä lapsista kertoi nyt puhelimessa oman perheensä matkasta Israeliin ja uuden elämän alusta. Kaikki muut perheenjäsenet murhattiin. Maier oli yksi niistä 7 henkilöstä, joita Gestapo ei löytänyt salaisesta huoneesta monen tunnin etsinnän jälkeen. Ratsian ja talon tyhjentämisen jälkeen hän siirtyi asumaan muualle, mutta joutui vielä Westerborgin leirille 1945. Siellä hän piti juutalaisten hengellisistä tarpeista huolta. Vapautuksen jälkeen vuonna 1946 Maier Mossel palasi Amsterdamiin ja hänestä tuli yksi Alankomaiden synagogan kuuluisimpia esilaulajia.
So Corrie was invited into the real resistance. There she was trained, and the resistance sent a brilliant architect to this house. He walked through the whole house, and then he decided that Corrie should sacrifice her bedroom, and he built there a hiding place. Meanwhile, they had a lot of people that needed their help, and as they always said yes, they had some difficult situations. A Jewish woman in labor, a very typical Jewish-looking old man with a big beard. They prayed and found solutions for everything and everybody. A lot of them were already brought to the countryside the same day when they came for help, but also they had people here in hiding permanently. And now they had their hiding place, and they needed to train to run into the hiding place as quickly as they could. They had an alarm bell.
When a raid would take place and they had to run into the hiding place.
That was being hit during the nighttime when the people were sleeping. Then they had to get off their bed, turn their mattress so you won't feel that somebody slept on it, run into the hiding place. During dinner time, when the alarm bell was being hit, they had to take their plate and cutlery, not forget their piece of carrot, and run as quickly as they could into the hiding place. Meanwhile, Betsy or Corrie would time the people who went running into the hiding place, and when they settled a new record, they would treat them on puff pastries. Well, Corrie helped so many people, and all went well for a long time. Till the 28th of February 1944. Things were different that day. Corrie was very sick. She had a high fever, a pneumonia, and she was lying in her bed. Downstairs in the shop, a man came and asked specifically for Corrie. Corrie went downstairs to listen to him. Later she remembered that he never had looked her straight into the eyes and that she had forgotten to pray. He said to her, "My wife has helped 2 Jewish women. She's now in prison for that. I can buy her out of prison for 600 guilders. I don't have that money, but I've heard, Corrie, you help people. Will you help me?" Corrie just said yes because she wanted to go back to her bed. They didn't have the money here. The resistance had to scramble the money from elsewhere. Later in the afternoon, the man could come back to get his money. Seconds after he had left with his money, Betsy sees out of the window cars of the Nazi security service driving very slowly towards this house, and she doesn't trust it. She hits the alarm bell, and 6 people run into the hiding place. 4 Jewish people and 2 people of the resistance, and they close the sliding panel, and now there is an empty place where they entered the hiding place, and in a split second Corrie sacrifices her prison bag and puts it there to not draw attention to the empty place in the closet. Seconds after the doorbell has rung, the Nazi security service stands in front of Corrie and hits her and screams at her. She's able to lie, and she's brought to the dining room where Betsy already was. Betsy tried to take out of the dining room a little sign, Alpina Watches, which was put in front of the window that it was safe for the people of the resistance to enter the house. She tried to take it off the window. The security service was aware of code language and put it back. More than normal, people of the resistance rang the doorbell that day and entered the house. It was the biggest raid of Haarlem. We have made an estimation that 30 people were taken out of this house at the end of the day and brought to the police station. They were brought to the gym room. There a policeman had to watch over them. Years later, this same policeman meets Corrie when she would visit Haarlem. And he told her, "I remember that there was such a peace among you all." The next day, this whole group was brought to Scheveningen. There was a prison called Hotel Oranje for Dutch resistance people. 10 days later, the father of Corrie died there, alone in a corridor. Corrie was put in isolation because they were afraid she had TBC. It was so difficult for Corrie. She cried out to the Lord not to be sent to a concentration camp and not to leave without her sister Betsy. There her relationship in prison developed with the Lord. She felt him close by. She talked with him day and night. They had to wait there, and she was alone. She had her 52nd birthday in that isolation cell, and the only guests were some ants on the floor. Remember the number 52, the age of Corrie, when she was sent in the end to a concentration camp. In the meantime, the people in the hiding place were waiting and standing, and I will take you there and show you how it went for them. And had been the bedroom of Corrie, and when the resistance had sent the architect who walked through the whole house, he had decided that Corrie should sacrifice her bedroom and he would build a hiding place in her bedroom. He built a new wall in front of the existing wall. Bricks were smuggled in, brick by bricks, by coats, and put into a big clock. That architect also built a cupboard next to it, which had an opening from the ground up. There you could enter the hiding place, because he was very clever. He had taken away the carpet and he had sawed through the wooden floor and let that brick wall sink in deeper. So when the raid came and the Nazis, they searched and stripped everything. They took away the carpet, but this really looked like the real wall, and that's why they never kicked in the cupboard. The bed of Corrie was here. And remember the prison bag that she had already packed. In a split second, she sacrificed it and put it here, because otherwise this would have drawn way too much attention when it had stayed empty. This is an original picture of the bedroom of Corrie, where you see that somebody is being helped out of the hiding place. It had been taken by the Dutch student who lived in this house. Because he had taken so many pictures, we were able to redecorate the house completely like it looked like during the Second World War time. Fortunately, he had given his camera with the photo roll to his girlfriend, so it was not found in the house when the raid took place. That's why this whole story had been able to be told and shared like this was. Because the Nazis, they searched the whole house, they stripped everything. They didn't find the people in the hiding place, but they found something else. They found much more food coupons than were needed for Corrie, Betsy and her father. I will show you where they found it. Here they hid food coupons, much more than were needed for the 3 people. The Nazis found them. That's why Betsy, Corrie and the father of Corrie stayed prisoned, because they were found in their house. They didn't find the people in the hiding place, and in the meantime the people in the hiding place were standing in the cold. It was cold, it was February. They only had a tin of cookies like this. They had forgotten to fill the water that day because Corrie was ill. She was lying in her bed. They had a toilet. This is not the original one, but they used it as a toilet and it had fallen on them. And they were standing here, the 6 people, and they waited. And when it became quiet in the house, actually they wanted to leave the hiding place. Fortunately, one of the men who was standing in the hiding place was called Reinhard Siertsma. He was active in the resistance, and he was aware that the Nazis had put a trap, that if it became quiet in the house, that wouldn't mean that they left, and that was true. The Nazis were so certain people must be hidden in the house, they sealed the house and put 2 Nazi policemen on guard, and they said, we will wait till either people will come out of their hiding place or they will starve to death. They had to wait and wait. 47 hours the people had to stand here in the cold. The toilet had fallen on them, it smelled. But then the 2 policemen came and they said, Reinhard Siertsma, het is veilig. Reinhard Siertsma, it is safe. And he opened the sliding panel. And he and the other resistance men, they fled through the roof of the neighbors. And the 4 Jewish people, they were washed and fed and brought to the countryside and given a safe place. Meanwhile, Corrie was in prison in Scheveningen, but she was able to receive a postcard from her sister Nolly, who was imprisoned. Nolly had written the address a little bit pointing towards the stamp, and Corrie looked behind the stamp and she read, all the clocks are safe. That was their secret code language. She realized by all clocks are safe that all people in the hiding place were safe, and she thanked and praised the Lord for that. Yes, in this room the family had dinner with so many guests that were invited or uninvited. Everybody was welcome. They just added some extra water to the soup. During the wartime, here they were having meetings with sometimes more than 15 people. And then one day, the head of a window cleaner popped up and looked inside and saw 15 people having a meeting. They were afraid he was spying on them, and somebody invented to pretend it was the birthday party of the father of Corrie, and they started to sing the Dutch happy birthday song. Corrie went outside to the window cleaner and asked him in to have some coffee. He said, oh, it's the wrong address, and he left. And after that, this family had been betrayed. He had been spying on them. And when the raid took place, all the people were brought to this room, and in this room, here the secret sign still is, that was put in front of the window, that it was safe for the people of the resistance to enter the house when it was showing in the window. It was the brand of the Alpina watches. Betsy tried to take it out of the window, but the security service during the raid was aware of secret codes and put it back. More than normal, the people of the resistance entered the house. But as I mentioned before, the brother of Corrie, Willem, was also in the house leading a Bible study group. And later, when this whole group of 30 people was brought to the police station, there were Dutch policemen working secretly for the resistance, and one of them said, is there anybody who needs to use the toilet? So the people of the resistance could go to the toilet and flush all their papers in the toilet. And they all said that they joined that Bible study group. So after that, they all were released. Well, we are now in the exhibition room, the old bedroom where the girls had slept during the wartime. And I will tell you more of what happened to Corrie and Betsy, because they were imprisoned in the prison in Scheveningen. But then after D-Day, which was very good news for the Dutch people because the Allied people were coming closer, it was not so good news for the prisoners of the Nazis. They were brought to a concentration camp in Holland, concentration camp called Vught. And later they were brought to a dark concentration camp in Germany, Ravensbrück. Well, you remember that Corrie, when she had put in isolation, had prayed not to leave without her sister, but also not to be brought, please Lord, to a concentration camp. And then Betsy and Corrie were brought to the concentration camp in Holland called Kamp Vught, but there they were reunited. They were together again, and they were filled with joy and hope that they were together. Corrie had gotten a little pocket Bible from a sweet nurse, and Betsy said, "The Lord has brought us here. He has sent us here to be a light among all these women who are living in despair. We are going to tell them that the Lord loves them and that the best is yet to come." And they started in their barack a prayer group, and they shared messages of the gospel of hope, and it became a very blessed place of light. Corrie and Betsy thought they would be free in a week. And yes, the Allied people came closer and they delivered parts of Holland, but then the Nazis shot all the men in the concentration camp Vught. And all the women were pushed into cattle bars, as you can see here, and driven deep down into Germany to a concentration camp called Ravensbrück. The pictures you see here are taken from the movie The Hiding Place. Corrie and Betsy entered the concentration camp where the guards had gotten a training in cruelty. They first were very much humiliated. They were undressed, they had to walk around naked, had to take a cold shower, and then wear dresses of dead women. And Corrie so wanted to bring her little Bible with her, but she took it and it was showing under her dress, and then all the Nazis were searching the woman who entered the camp. Corrie started to pray, and just before they wanted to search her, a woman in front of her gets a seizure, and Corrie can pass with the little Bible. She and Betsy are brought to their barack. There, lice and flea jumped on them when they entered their barack. Corrie was not amused, and Betsy said, "We are going to thank the Lord tonight in all circumstances. We are even going to thank Him for the lice and the fleas." Corrie did not agree, but Betsy did that. And there in that barack, they also started to share the message of hope and love of our Heavenly Father. And so many women there came to faith, and it became such a place of peace, as you can see here on the picture. And never a guard entered to stop them. Later they found out that was because of the lice and the fleas. Betsy was also aware of that they should keep on caring and sharing for others. In this place, it was very cruel. Betsy said it feels like pits of hell here because they got very little food. Sometimes even no salt in the food. And when you are already slowly dying from hunger and there's no salt added to your food, you can feel so terrible. They really had little sleep, and they had to stand on a roll call for hours in the cold. And Betsy said, "We won't choose the best place. We keep on the outside to bless others, to love others." Here Betsy's being hit because she couldn't work that hard. Betsy was older than Corrie and she was slowly dying. And actually Corrie wants to hit the guard back for hitting Betsy. And Betsy says to Corrie, with her last powers, "Corrie, don't hate, only love." A miracle happened there. Betsy had a little bottle of vitamin D drops. And Corrie wanted to keep Betsy with her as long as possible, so she didn't want to share those drops with the women around her in the barack. And Betsy said, "We keep on sharing," and it never emptied, just like the miracle of the widow in the Bible. And then one day a sweet nurse came. She had a brown bag filled with vitamin B pills. And the next day the bottle was empty because the miracle wasn't needed anymore. Betsy and Corrie, they felt every day was worse than the day before, but there, Betsy described it as pits of hell. They felt that the love of the Lord was bigger still. And one night, Betsy woke Corrie up. She said, "I've had a dream of the Lord, listen to me." And Corrie listened. Betsy said, "We both will be free in the new year. And then we will get a big house, wooden floors and a lot of rooms, and we will help people who don't have family and housing anymore. And there we will tell them that to restore from all the dark things that happened to them, the key is to forgive the people who did that, and we will let them work in the garden. We will also go back to Germany, and there we will rent barracks, we paint them green, hang flowery baskets, and take care of all the people who have been hurt in Germany. And after that, we will travel all over the world, and we will tell about our experiences here. We will tell about forgiveness, and we will tell about the love of the Lord, and especially we will visit prisoners, and they will listen to us, and they will believe us, because we also have been imprisoned here. And Corrie listened to Betsy, and a couple of days later, Betsy dies. Corrie doesn't understand anything anymore. She had prayed not to be sent to a concentration camp, and also not to leave without her sister Betsy. Then another miracle happens. I want to show this to you. It's an Entlassungsschein. Corrie was standing on a roll call. Her number was being called, and she gets releasement paper. She is being released out of Ravensbrück. There she stood in front of the administration desk. She dares to ask this question: what about my sister Betsy? Because she found out that they didn't know she already had passed away. And the Nazis said, "You raus. Your sister has to stay here." And if Corrie would have left this camp, and knowing that her sister would have still been alive, she said to herself, "I would have been tormented each day that I would live in freedom." And she was so grateful, because she realized Betsy is free. She's in heaven now, and I am free. And she wanted to obey the will of the Lord, and she wanted to walk in all the good works that He already had laid in front of her. She went back over the border in Holland, and she entered Holland in Groningen, which was the countryside. There was still enough food. In Haarlem there was already hunger, a lot of hunger. And Corrie, of course, her body, it was very much damaged, and she was brought to a hospital, and there one of the nurses was one of the girls from the girls' club she knew from Haarlem. So a friendly face took care of her. And when she was strong enough, she came back to this house without her father, without her sister. It was difficult for her, but she remembered to already talk about what happened. And she went to church to speak about forgiveness and about the love of the Lord that is bigger still, even in the darkest place. There a woman was listening to her, and a woman hears a voice in her head: "Your son will be free. To thank me, give your house to Corrie." And the woman goes to Corrie, and Corrie says, "It could be the voice of the Lord. Just wait, then it will happen." A week later, the son of this woman comes home. He had been very active in the resistance, and the woman goes to Corrie. She says, "I have a very big house." And Corrie says, "Does it have wooden floors and a lot of rooms?" "Yes." And Corrie moves in that house, and she takes in a lot of people who don't have housing and family anymore, and she starts to help other people. So Corrie does two things. She starts to forgive and to help other people, although she also suffered severely. And then she chooses to do the next thing. She hears about the man who had betrayed them after the war. He had been sentenced to death, and he was imprisoned. She writes him a letter that she has suffered severely by his betrayal. Her brother Willem is slowly dying because he had been imprisoned and he had gotten an infection there. Her sister Betsy died and her father died. And she said to him, "But I choose to forgive you because I am forgiven by the Lord, and He wants us to forgive other people." She gave him also a Bible, and it was sent to the man, and he had written her back. A week before he was sentenced to death, he wrote her, "I have given my life in the hands of the Lord." And she felt so grateful for that. But also in Holland, she felt people didn't want to hear much about forgiveness. They wanted to forget and work hard in building the country. And the Lord said to her that she had to go to America, and she wanted to buy a boat ticket there to go to America, but then she found out that she had to wait a whole year. She went back praying, and then within a week another miracle happened because she was able to go on a cargo ship. But then she really needed to find a job. She kept on praying and reading in her Bible, and yes, she met a pastor and he said to her, "Are you from Holland? Have you heard the story of that nurse who had been in a concentration camp and who speaks about forgiveness?" Her eyes start to twinkle and she says, "That's me. I wasn't a nurse, but I was in a concentration camp." She's invited. And there so many American people listen to her speaking of forgiveness and also of the love of the Lord. And it's such a blessed time. But then Corrie finds that her relationship with the Lord becomes quiet. She prays, "Did I sin?" And she hears only one word, Germany. And she remembered that she wanted to travel everywhere, except not to Germany, because the memories, they were so painful. But the Lord loves all people. It were never the Germans, it were the Nazis, and it was the evil through them. And there, the biggest miracle happens. At the end of her speaking about forgiveness, a man comes up towards her, and she recognizes him as one of the cruel guards of Ravensbrück. She actually wants to run away from him. A lot of feelings arise inside of her. But she has to stand there politely and wait. And he says to her, "Thank you for your speaking about forgiveness, Mrs. ten Boom. I have been a guard in Ravensbrück and I've done cruel things. After the war I came to faith. I have asked forgiveness to the Lord and I know I am forgiven because of what the Lord Jesus has done on the cross for all of us. But then I prayed to the Lord, please, can I meet somebody who was in Ravensbrück so I can ask forgiveness? You have been there. Do you want to forgive me?" He asks Corrie. And Corrie is very honest in her books. She didn't feel like forgiving, but she remembered Romans 5 verse 5. The Lord has poured His Holy Spirit out in our hearts. He will do it. And we have to choose to forgive. So almost mechanically, she sends her hand to the man. And at the moment they shake hands and she speaks, "I forgive you." Inside of her heart, a warmth releases her from all the dark feelings and the pain and the bitterness. And it's such a moment of joy and love. And the man feels it too. And they laugh. And since that moment, Corrie can speak and tell about forgiveness. And so many people can open their hearts for forgiveness. And later, Corrie loves to travel to prisons, dark prisons in Africa, where she sometimes has to write her name on a contract that she might not leave this prison alive because it's too dangerous. And then when she stands in front of the group of very angry looking men, she sometimes is shocked, and then she says to the Lord, "I can't do it." And then the Lord with his silent whisper says, "That's true, but I can." And through Corrie, he can do so many miracles that so many prisoners come to faith. And then 30 years after she had been in Ravensbrück, she thanked the Lord that she suffered there so much, because now she could understand the suffering so much more of other people. In Jerusalem, they have a monument, Yad Vashem, for all the Jewish people who were killed during the Second World War. They also have a place called the Garden of the Righteous among the Nations. There they plant trees for people who were not Jewish, but who gave their life for the Jewish people during the Second World War. It was also given to Corrie and her family, and it was planted by Corrie. The tree died at the same year that Corrie died, but it has been replanted and it flourishes very well at the moment. Corrie wanted to have her own house in America, but the Lord made her travel to all nations. She went together with travel companion ladies, but when she became very old, then she got her house in America, and she called it Shalom. It had hummingbirds and orange trees. Still, she kept on working and speaking. If you look here at the face of Corrie, you won't see any bitterness, although she went through so many dark things. But there in that house, she told Pamela Rosewell, who was her travel and companion lady, I have again had a dream that I'm lying in my bed and I'm imprisoned in my own body and I can't speak and move. 2 times she gets the same dream, and then she gets a stroke and another one. And she can't speak and move, and she has to lie in her bed for 5 years. A book is written about it called The 5 Silent Years. And there was such a surrendering in Corrie to the will of the Lord, and so much of his love pouring out of her, that it has been 5 very blessed years for the people who met her. And then she died at her birthday, at the age of 91. And she was buried in California. So this was the Menoran the Jewish people who were in hiding could use for their festivities. And this had been the Bible of the familie ten Boom. Corrie loved to make embroideries. There you see an original one, very Dutch. This is also an embroidery that she had made. You see a picture of Corrie holding it. She holds the behind side of the tapestry. She shows it always first because she has a poem that belongs to it. Would you like to read this poem for us? Okay. Only the first part that's...
Yes, okay. My life is but the weaving between my God and me. I do not choose the colors. He works so steadily. Oftentimes he weaves in sorrow, and I, in foolish pride, forget he sees the upper and I the other side. Yes.
And she would turn it.
Oh.
Would you like to read the second part, please?
Not till the loom is silent and the shuttles cease to fly will God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned.
Thank you. Well, you can have it.
Thank you so much.
Then she would turn it again and she would say, does your life also look like this? Dark threads, a lot of knots that you don't understand why things are happening. This is how my life looked like, said Corrie. The worst things happened in my life. But throughout my life, together with Jesus, I've experienced that there is no pit so deep, that God's love is not deeper still. He can give us a peace that goes beyond all understanding. He lets all things work for good for those who love him. He has no problems, only plans, and the best is yet to come. This is what Corrie always took when she went traveling and speaking. The poem is not written by Corrie, but this poem, I would love to end with the poem that is written by Corrie. If I look at the world, I will be distressed. And if I look within, I will be depressed. But if I look at Jesus, I will feel at rest. Jesus is victor. We finished the tour in the old original watchmaker and repairsman shop of Vader ten Boom, as you can see him here. And also it has been made into a bookshop now, and I want to introduce our director to you, Frits.
Hi, I'm glad to meet you. Very well. And yes, we have here a very nice bookshop. And also we have some books about Corrie ten Boom, and you with Hebrew tell what's Corrie's opinion about forgiveness. And you know that's a very important issue of Corrie, and this is a hiding place.
So thank you, Frits, for inviting us. It has been really a pleasure and a blessing to be here, as well as Maaike. Thank you for your excellent guiding.
Welcome.
It has been really touching day to day to be here in Haarlem in this museum. Thank you for both of us, and God bless you.
Okay.
Further.
God bless you too.